and thank you for tuning in. Today, we will be discussing an increasingly common concern called separation anxiety, what it is, and how we can help reduce it in our dogs. Before discussing separation anxiety, let's first clarify what separation anxiety is not. Separation anxiety is not just the occasional display of misbehaviors, and it is not synonymous to boredom nor displeasure. If your dog is displaying signs of boredom, such as chewing on pillows, without displaying signs of panic nor anxiety, check out our guide on how to alleviate boredom in dogs. So, what is separation anxiety? Well, separation anxiety is an actual behavioral disorder. It is where an individual experiences repeated episodes of sudden feelings of panic and/or intense anxiety in response to separation from, or even just the threat of separation from, their human companion. In short, it is a negative emotional response in response to the specific stimulus of you possibly leaving. So now that we know what it is, how can we help alleviate it? Well, given this definition, classical conditioning, specifically graded counter conditioning, will be the perfect way to help our dogs feel more comfortable with us leaving. Just as a brief refresher, classical conditioning is a form of training used to help our learners alter or improve their emotional state in response to a stimulus. So in this case, the stimulus would be us leaving. And graded counter conditioning is a specific and most effective subset of classical conditioning, whereby gradual increments of intensity of a given stimulus are paired with treats, and we only progress to the next increment of intensity of said stimulus when the learner is clearly comfortable and looks for a treat in response to the current stimulus. So in short, it's very stepwise. Now, that's a lot of words, so let's break this down into simple steps to tackle alleviating separation anxiety specifically. Like with any training regimen, it is important to first note your final objective, which in this case will be to decrease the dog's stress when their human companion leaves the home. Now, to many dogs, having their human leave is quite stressful, so a few things to keep in mind before leaving the home is never punishing the dog for being stressed or for misbehaving due to stress. This will only increase their stress and lead to less desirable outcomes in the long term. Do not make leaving a big deal. Leaving should be a very casual, very calm, stress-free affair. And remember that everyone's behavior modification regimen will be slightly different, as every human and every dog is their own individual. So while this training guide will help you learn about tackling separation anxiety, keep in mind that your final product will need to be curtailed to you and your learner specifically. This is why we have provided an empty behavioral modification guide, so you can use what you learn here to develop your own strategy for decreasing separation anxiety in your dog. Now, to begin our graded counter conditioning, a great place to start is by listing off all of the steps that go into your leaving home routine. We will then use this list to build your behavioral modification guide. On the screen, you will see my example list. Before I leave for work every morning, I have established the following routine for myself, and each aspect of this routine may serve as a cue to my dog that I am about to leave for the day. Therefore, it is very important to make note of every single one and use graded counter conditioning to alleviate any stress associated with each step of my personal morning routine. Take some time and write out your own list. Feel free to use the template provided. Now that we have our list, we can work to use graded counter conditioning to improve the dog's response to each part of this routine, until eventually the dog becomes comfortable with us leaving and remaining gone. Like with all training regimens, it is important to be cognizant of our antecedent arrangement. If you are unsure what antecedent arrangement is, feel free to refer to our Dog Training and Learning New Behaviors Guide, which discusses just that. We also briefly go over antecedent arrangement in our ABCs of Learning video. Some things to keep in mind and serve as our antecedent arrangement include ensuring that there are no other provoking nor excitatory stimuli present, such as a loud TV or other people around. Ensuring that the treats we are giving throughout this process are hidden and given in a consistent manner. If the dog appears stressed at any point, this includes stereotypic behaviors such as tail chasing, that means we have progressed to the next step too fast. So take a pause and go back to the previous step, repeat it a minimum of 10 times before moving on. Do not progress to the next step unless the dog is noticeably comfortable with the current step, and make sure each step is repeated at minimum 20 times. And make sure that you give treats pervasively for each step, regardless of how the dog responds. Remember, this is because we just want to build a positive association with us leaving. We do not want to train the dog to complete a new behavior, so there really is no wrong response. Even if the dog barks, that is okay here. We are just hoping to help the dog feel safe and comfortable with us leaving by providing treats. So pervasive treats is very important. Now, let's refer back to our leaving home routine list. For me, my first item on my list was coffee. So to tackle this stimulus first, I would pretend to brew coffee while giving the dog treats. I could also have a recording of the brewing sound for making coffee play for the dog to hear while I am doing this step. It is important to keep providing treats and to not move on to the next step until it is clear that the dog is very comfortable with this current stimulus. If the dog is clearly overstimulated with this first presented stimulus, that means we have not broken it down into its component pieces far enough. For example, if I approach the coffee maker, turn on the coffee maker, pour water into my coffee maker, and then the coffee maker makes noises while it brews, and then the dog shows clear signs of duress, I can take each of those steps that went into brewing my coffee and counter condition each one at a time, starting with first just giving the dog treats every time I approach the coffee maker. Once the dog is comfortable with that, I can then give treats if I approach the coffee maker and then turn it on, and then so on. Just remember that the goal of this entire activity is to help reduce stress. So if we are causing stress anywhere in this process, we are digressing and not progressing. Now the next item in my leaving home routine list is putting on my shoes. So for this, I could repeatedly practice putting on and taking off my shoes by the front door while giving my dog treats. Again, remember not to progress until it is clear that the dog is comfortable with the presented stimulus. You're going to repeat each step a minimum of 20 times. Following my putting on the shoes step, on my list I have putting on my sweater. And so I can practice putting on my shoes and sweater and taking them off again by the front door, all while giving my dogs treats throughout the entire process, and then repeating this process over and over. Following, I have my bag, and so I could practice putting on my shoes, sweater, and then my work bag, all while giving my dog treats. And then to reset, I would just take all that off, and then I would come back up and put my shoes, sweater, and work bag back on again while giving the dog treats. Again, repeating at least 20 times and not progressing until it is clear that the dog is very comfortable with this stimulus. Following, I have coffee. Again, I would practice putting on my shoes, sweater, work bag, pouring coffee into my thermos, and then resetting everything, all while giving my dog treats. Following, I have the door handle, which is where I would practice putting on my shoes, my sweater, my work bag, pouring coffee into my thermos, then walking towards the front door, grabbing the front door handle, all while giving my dog treats. The key here is that I'm not opening the door yet. I'm just going to the door and touching the handle, and I'm showing my dog that this is okay and that we're pairing it with positive things like treats. And then we would undo all that for resetting and then redo it while giving treats. Following, I have opening as my next step, where I would basically repeat the previous process, but this time I would actually open the front door, pause for a brief second, and then close it and reset. Again, all while giving my dog treats. The next step would be walking, which is again repeating the previous step, but this time when I open the front door, I'm going to walk through the front door, pause for a second, and then come back inside, close the door behind me, and reset. And again, the whole process all while giving treats. To clarify, We don't need to give treats while we are resetting. If I am taking off my sweater, that is part of the reset. We want to pair putting on the sweater and the process of leaving the home with positive things like giving treats. Following, we have closing. So now what we are going to do is repeat the previous step where I put on all my things, grab my coffee, go to the door handle, open the door, walk through the door, but this time I'm going to walk out of the door and close the door behind me, but only for a brief second, and then immediately open the door back up again and go back inside. That way the dog learns that just because I go out the door, it doesn't mean I'm gone forever. And again, this whole process is going to be greeted with treats. And remember, like I said before, each step has to be repeated at least 20 times, and we do not move on until it is very clear that the dog is very comfortable with the current stimulus, whichever happens last. We take our time so our dog can build up comfort. Next, we have going, which is where we repeat the previous step, but this time when I close the door behind myself, I'm going to wait 2 seconds before coming back inside again and doing our reset. Please note that you may need help from a second unseen person for this one step that can possibly toss treats while you are gone and on the other side of the door. There are such things as automatic treat dispensers for purchase, but you can also have people toss treats in through an unseen window for the dog if that's easier. The key here is that you want the dog to not be able to see you when you're on the other side of the door, but they are still receiving treats. The next step in this process will be repeating the previous step, but we are going to close the door behind us for 5 full seconds. And then following this, we're going to repeat the previous step again, but gradually increase the amount of time that we are gone until you can leave for an extended period of time without inducing stress in the dog. Hopefully, by the end of this training regimen, your dog has grown more comfortable with you leaving the home, and they have paired it with something positive as opposed to stressful. This should hopefully help the dog live a far less stressful, far more happy life because of it. Taking the extra time to work with your dog to help them live their best life is one of the most rewarding things we can do, and I hope this activity helped guide you to successfully decrease stress in your own dog at home. Now, to ensure that the dog is not bored once you leave, I recommend you check out our Battling Boredom Guide for some tips and tricks for keeping your dog engaged while you're away. Thank you so much!